March the 17th, 2023, Milwaukee, a peaceful city in Wisconsin, USA, welcomed a cold afternoon as usual. On a small deserted street, a man walked into a coffee shop with a polite appearance, dark coat, and alert eyes. He chose a secluded table near the window, sat down, and took out his phone. He didn't order a drink. He didn't look around. He just spoke quietly in a low, deep voice, almost whispering. Thousands of kilometers away, an apartment in England had just turned on the lights. A middle-aged woman sat in front of a computer, holding her phone, her eyes intently reading each message that appeared continuously. The light from the screen reflected on her tense face, indicating that something was wrong. The sentences seemed meaningless. The messages seemed personal. But that very afternoon, an invisible string was tied, quietly, discreetly, and suffocatingly tight. And from that moment, everything began. Mohammed Nazir, 27, was once known as a successful man in the Pakistani community in the UK. He owned a small chain of retail stores, had his own car, dressed neatly, lived in a fairly large apartment in Birmingham. To outsiders, he was the type of man who was stable, driven, even quite reserved. Amy Betrayal was the complete opposite. Nearly 40, unemployed for a long time, had worked as a receptionist for a small company in Milwaukee, but quit for health reasons. After a divorce, she moved back in with her mother in a quiet bungalow on the outskirts of the city. No job, no connections, and no clear goals. Two seemingly unrelated people met on a short business trip to the US by Nazir. One free evening, they scanned Tinder. The first message was simple. "Hi, are you around here?" And from there, the endless days of texting began. None of them knew that a few months later, those harmless messages would lead to a dark plan, written with blind trust and hidden hatred. Mohammed Nazir's life seemed peaceful until he had a serious conflict with a man, whose identity has not been disclosed, but who, according to Nazir, was a real threat. The business disputes, the tense text messages left Nazir feeling pushed to the edge. And then, instead of resolving it through legal means or dialogue, he began to think of a more extreme option: to eliminate the man permanently. The idea did not come up overnight, but it grew in secret conversations between Nazir and Amy Betrayal. It was Amy who suggested finding someone to do it in America. From January to March 2023, the two spent hours each week exchanging WhatsApp messages, detailing chilling details. The target's name, the specific address, the time of the attack. The plan: stage a car accident or shoot someone from a distance. The reward was $30,000, sent by wire transfer. For them, this was no longer fantasy. This was a real plan, and it was being put into action. The messages between Mohammed Nazir and Amy Betrayal became increasingly cold, calculating, and emotionless. Gone were the love stories. Gone were the questions. Instead, there were GPS coordinates, precise descriptions of the house, times when the victim was usually out, even the license plate number and physical features. Nazir was the one who provided everything. He did not hesitate to send photos, full names, and detailed personal information. In one message later collected, Nazir wrote, "I want him gone. As soon as possible." Amy, from across the ocean, acted as the go-between. It was she who contacted the worker, who, according to the introduction, was a professional assassin in the United States. Their conversations were initially filled with suspicion and wariness, but gradually they grew to trust each other completely. Nazir did not just want to kill, he wanted it to be carefully disguised. In a recording picked up by the agents, Nazir calmly suggested, "If possible, make it look like a robbery gone wrong. A thief breaks in, gets caught by surprise, panics, and opens fire. Everyone will think it was an accident." The man talking to them did not react much. His voice was even, his answers were to the point. There was no sign of anything unusual, and that was the reason why the couple completely believed that they were talking to a real killer. To prove his goodwill, Nazir even transferred a deposit in advance, several $1,000s, through an anonymous payment app. He called it a reservation fee and promised to pay the rest after the mission is complete. Not just once, but many times, Nazir urged. "When will it be done? Why is it taking so long? Are you sure there won't be any traces left?" Their mentality was not fear, but impatience. They were impatient, as if waiting for an order to arrive on time. In their minds, this was a deal, a profitable exchange, a price for a man's eternal silence. But there was one thing they didn't know. The assassin they were working with was actually an undercover FBI agent, embedded in a cybercrime sting operation. Every text message they sent, every whisper on the phone, every transaction of money, it was all recorded, stored, and tracked step by step. The trap was closing, but they still thought they were in control. Nazir and Amy believed they were manipulating everything remotely, but what they didn't know was that every step of their plan was being closely monitored. The man they believed to be a professional assassin was actually an undercover FBI agent, part of the FBI's transnational crime unit. From the moment their conversation began, all the data, texts, voices, photos, transactions was recorded, encrypted, and filed away. Every time Nazir texted, every money transfer, every time Amy exchanged details about the target, it all became ironclad evidence. And then after Nazir made his first wire transfer, a small amount but enough to establish motive and behavior, the FBI decided it couldn't wait any longer. A targeted assassination was underway, and if not stopped in time, a life could be lost in a matter of days. An arrest warrant was issued. Despite not having a physical scene, the FBI still proceeded to reconstruct the entire assassination plan using 3D models, satellite images, and text messages to serve the investigation. The action map, time, location were all recreated like a game of life and death. And in that game, Nazir and Amy were not the winners, but two pawns who had entered the battlefield of the law. From the first messages between Mohammed Nazir and Amy Betro, the FBI's Special Investigation Team began to take action. Although not revealing their identity, the undercover agent assigned to disguise as a killer immediately informed his superiors about the seriousness of the incident. At the FBI headquarters in Milwaukee, a task force was established. At the same time, an urgent cooperation document was sent to the UK's National Crime Agency, NCA, requesting support in tracking Nazir, the mastermind who was in Birmingham. Within 48 hours, the two sides established a secret communication channel, sharing data in real time. Everything happened quietly. None of the suspects or those around them knew that. From phones, computers to Wi-Fi devices in their homes, they were all under surveillance. Nazir was tracked using GPS technology embedded in the chat application, while Amy was monitored via traffic cameras in the city's civil security system. Data analysts spent the night deciphering the messages, verifying the authenticity of the address Nazir provided, and comparing it with the victim's residence records. Even the few seconds of voice recordings were filtered, transcribed, and serialized for the prosecution. What particularly caught the FBI's attention was the way the two men acted coolly, with almost no hesitation throughout the planning process. Instead of being afraid or hesitant, they discussed each step in detail with an eerie calm. Nazir even proactively sent satellite images of the victim's home, describing his living habits, travel times, and even suggesting good times to act. Amy coordinated back and forth between Nazir and the assassin, using short but clear language, as if they were handling an order, not a human life. Every little detail was carefully kept by the FBI. Google Maps sent in text messages, electronic transaction receipts, voice chats. Everything was gradually connected, forming an undeniable overall picture. After 3 months of secret investigation, the file of more than 600 pages was completed. The trap was set, all escape routes were blocked, and there was only one last step left: arrest. But for the FBI, the timing of action was not just possible, it had to be inevitable. Because if there was just 1 minute of delay, the life of an innocent person might not have a second chance. Early on the morning of March 27, 2023, at Birmingham International Airport, Mohammed Nazir appeared with a small suitcase and passport in hand. He was wearing a dark jacket, carrying a light backpack, looking no different from the thousands of other passengers waiting in line to check in for their flight to the United States. But just a few steps before reaching the security checkpoint, 3 undercover agents from the British police, working with the FBI, approached. No resistance, no reaction. Nazir was handcuffed on the spot, with the astonished eyes of the surrounding passengers. At the same time, across the Atlantic, in Milwaukee, Amy Betrayal was sitting in her living room, phone in hand, when there was a knock on the door. Unprepared, she opened the door, and before her were two FBI agents with a signed arrest warrant. Amy was stunned, speechless. In the interrogation room, Nazir initially maintained a confident demeanor. He claimed it was just a private joke between him and his girlfriend, with no intention of actually carrying it out. But when confronted with the recording of his own voice, the text messages filled with details of the assassination and the evidence of the money transfer, his face changed color. Hours later, Nazir officially admitted, "I went too far." As for Amy, she said she was just a messenger, following her boyfriend's wishes because she thought he was being threatened. But to the investigating agency, she was no longer innocent, but an accomplice. And neither of them had a way out. After months of surveillance, the FBI completed a 300-page indictment, including hours of recorded conversations between Nazir and Amy, video exchanges, maps of the supposed crime scene, and evidence of electronic money transfers. All were numbered, analyzed, and presented to the federal court as an irrefutable indictment. When the case was announced, the media in both the UK and the US exploded. Sensational headlines appeared densely. Hitman hired online, cross-border murder plot, or long-distance couple and bloody plan exposed. Public opinion was shocked by the coldness and calculation of two people who were considered normal. In October 2023, the court sentenced Mohammed Nazir to 15 years in prison for serious conspiracy to commit murder. Amy Betrayal received 10 years in prison with mitigating circumstances for cooperating with the investigation. A planned murder is still a crime, even if it has not yet occurred, the judge concluded. The man who almost became a victim in the case, though he had no idea that the plan to kill him had been carefully prepared, still had to live in fear for months after being warned by the FBI. He was given absolute protection, but the feeling of insecurity, psychological trauma, and the haunting feeling that he had been in the sights of a targeted murder were things that could not be erased. The case of Mohammed Nazir and Amy Betrayal not only shocked public opinion, but also left a profound warning. The line between normal people and criminals is sometimes just a few text messages, a seemingly harmless phone call. In an era where technology can connect anyone, anywhere, the internet is no longer a place to hide crimes. Every trace is left behind, and the law never stands still. What do you think about this case? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to follow real, thrilling, and unbelievable cases. But they are true.